Welcome dear students for this fifth lecture of chapter number 2, that is ecosystem. I, Mr. Amol Handore, Assistant Professor at Department of Zoology, KTHM College Nasik, welcome you for this fifth lecture on topic grassland ecosystem. So let's take a brief recap of previous lecture. So in previous lecture we understood what is terrestrial ecosystem. What are the biotic and abiotic factors of a terrestrial ecosystem? Then we understood what is the structure of a forest ecosystem and what are its biotic and abiotic factors. In today's lecture, the study objectives will be introduction to grassland ecosystem, what are the different types of grassland ecosystem, and biotic and abiotic factors of a particular grassland ecosystem. So we have understood now what is an ecosystem. So where we have the producers in the form of plants, then we have the herbivores which are called as primary consumers, then we have the secondary consumers in the form of carnivores, and we have tertiary consumers which feed on the secondary consumers. So this is a typical grassland ecosystem which is dominated by the grasses. You will hardly find any tree. So what is grassland? First we will understand what is grassland, then we will go to grassland ecosystem. So grassland are the areas where vegetation is basically dominated by grasses. So you will hardly see any tree, but it is dominated by the different types of grasses. And if we see on entire earth, 40% of earth's surface is covered by these grasslands. And there are major two types of grassland, that is temperate and tropical type of grasslands. So now let's see what is grassland ecosystem. So a grassland ecosystem is basically the assemblage of plants, animals as well as microorganisms which can live in an environment where grass is the primary source of food. So this is the grasses form the primary vegetation, and rarely you will find shrubs or the larger trees. So let's see what are the characteristics of a grassland ecosystem. So we have started with a terrestrial ecosystem, in which the first terrestrial ecosystem we have studied in last lecture, that is forest ecosystem. Now grassland ecosystem is another type of terrestrial ecosystem. So grasslands, as I have already told you, they are dominated by grasses and you will hardly see any trees. Sometimes trees are totally absent. Now if we see, they are found in both areas, that is temperate areas as well as tropical areas of the earth, and the rainfall ranges between 250 mm to 900 mm per year. However, this rainfall is very unpredictable. That means like we have monsoon when we have the rainfall, but in grassland ecosystem there is no such defined time for the rains. So grazing ecosystem is dominated by the herbivorous animals, which are also called as grazers or grazing animals. So such animals dominate in the grassland ecosystem and they occur in large herds or groups. And we know that if these herbivores are continuously feeding on the grasses, obviously they affect the producer community, that is grasses. If they are eating less amount of grazing activities there, then the primary productivity of that grassland is more. But however, if there are more herbivores or the grazing animals, obviously they will eat more grass, so they will disrupt the grass community, as well as the soil surface will be exposed and there will be degradation of that grassland ecosystem. So number of herbivores or grazing animals will decide the primary productivity of a grassland ecosystem. Now, basically, there are three types of grasslands and which can be distinguished according to the climatic conditions. So, what are these three type of grasslands? The first one are called as tropical grasslands. Second category of grassland is temperate grasslands, and the third category is polar grasslands. However, these polar grasslands are only situated at the Arctic region. In the Antarctic region, grasslands are absent. So majority of grasslands belong to these two categories, that is tropical and temperate type of the grasslands. In this picture, you will see the distribution of grasslands across the world. So they cover around 25% or more of the Earth's surface, and more than 1 billion people, they are dependent on these grassland for their livelihood and as well as food source. So livelihood means they will get some income from these grasslands as well as they get their food. So grasslands are only absent on the Antarctic region, otherwise they are present in most of the regions of the world. Now if we talk just about India, in India there are only two types of grasslands, that is tropical grasslands and temperate grasslands. So now let's study the first important type of grassland, that is tropical grassland. So these tropical grasslands are located between the equator, that is between the Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn. So in this map you will see these two lines, that is Tropic of Capricorn and Tropic of Cancer. In between you will have the majority of the tropical grasslands. So all the grasslands are situated between these two lines, that is Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn. Majority of these tropical grasslands are present in the African subcontinent. So this is the African subcontinent. You can see majority of its area, that dark green area, is the grasslands. Followed by you have the grassland which are present in the South America, and you have few tropical grasslands which are present in the Australia as well as few in the India. Now these tropical grasslands are very arid regions. That means they have the low rainfall and they have the harsh climatic conditions. So this is a typical tropical grassland which you can see in the African subcontinent. So this is a African tropical grassland. Now let's see the important characteristics of a tropical grassland. So they have high average temperature and moderate to low rainfall. That means rainfall is very low in range. Characterized by the tall grasses. You will obviously have the presence of grasses, but here the grasses could grow very tall and you have the very few trees and shrubs. So they are popularly called by another name, that is savanna. So the African grasslands or these tropical grasslands are also called as savanna grasslands or simply as savannas. If we see examples, so savannas in Africa and this Valvedar grassland which is present in the Gujarat. Now this grassland ecosystem have variety of grazing animals also called as herbivores like zebra, giraffe, gazelles. These are the antlers or the deers. Antelope, these are also species of deers. Then wild buffalo, wildebeest, ostrich, this is a bird, and many other species of herbivorous animals. And feeding onto these herbivores, you have the secondary and tertiary consumers like lions, hyenas, cheetah, leopard, and wild dogs. Tropical grassland have two distinct seasons only, that is rainy season and dry season. And during the dry season, the temperature reaches very high, so there are chances of seasonal fires. So many a times this grassland ecosystem will be burnt by these seasonal fires occurring in the dry seasons. Now we come to the second important type of grassland, that is known as temperate grassland. So temperate grasslands are usually found on the flat, gentle sloped hill areas. If we see the climatic conditions of a temperate grassland, then we can observe that these grasslands have temperate type of climate. So we should understand the meaning of word temperate. So what is meant by temperate? So that means the winters are very cold and the summers are very hot. So there are two distinct seasons, that is winter and summer. However, both are very harsh. Now in this temperate grassland, trees and shrubs are very rare. So we know that the grass community dominate in a grassland type of a ecosystem. So you have very less trees and shrubs, and then you have the presence of grazers, that is the herbivores. Now you will see this temperate grassland ecosystem in United States and Canada, where these grasslands are called by the name prairies. In South America, temperate grasslands are known by the name pampas. In Africa, they are called as velds, and in Central Europe and Asia, in which India is present, they are known by the name steppes. Now let's see the difference between temperate and tropical grassland. So this temperate grassland is located in the temperate areas of the earth, whereas tropical grasslands we have seen they are present between the Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn. So they are present in the tropical latitude. In temperate grassland, grasses are very short, whereas in tropical grasslands, the grasses they grow very high, that is up to the, they are very tall, up to the height of 3 meters. Now if we see, they have, the temperate grassland have treeless areas where rainfall is less, whereas in tropical grassland soil is not fertile and you will have the presence of these, some trees are present. Here the rainfall is intermediate. In temperate grassland soil is highly fertile, in tropical grassland soil is less fertile, and you have the drier climates. So we have seen in temperate grassland the temperature conditions are very harsh compared to the tropical grasslands. Now we come to the last type of grassland, that is polar grasslands. So as the name suggests, polar areas. However, these polar grasslands, they are absent in Antarctic region. We know that on Earth there are two poles, North Pole and South Pole. So these are present only on the North Pole. So these are found in the polar regions of the Arctic. They are characterized by climatic conditions like very cold. So severe cold, you have the presence of snow, and due to the snow there is a very strong and freezing winds are present along with the ice. So these conditions are very harsh for the growth of trees. That's why you do not have trees but the presence of community which is dominated by grasses. So only small grasses in the form of annual plants grow in summer when sunshine is present. So you have the presence of few plants when the sunshine is present, otherwise it is covered with the snow. Now the very distinctive animals which can sustain such cold conditions can only survive in the polar grassland. So you will see wolves, weasels, Arctic foxes and reindeers are seen in this polar grassland ecosystem. Now let's see what are the common abiotic components of a common or a particular grassland ecosystem. So these abiotic components, the very important one is the soil. Now this soil is rich with organic and inorganic components, and they are responsible for the primary productivity of that particular land. Now this includes elements like carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus and sulfur, because these are present in different compounds like carbon dioxide, water, nitrates, phosphates and sulfates, which are present in air as well as in the soil of grassland ecosystem. So all these components, that is these elements in the form of organic and inorganic compounds, are the basic abiotic factors of a typical grassland ecosystem. And now we move to the last part of today's discussion, that is biotic components of a grassland ecosystem. So they are dominated obviously by the grasses. So grasses are the producers. You have very few amount of shrubs, that means smaller trees, and the larger tall trees. So grasses like Dichanthium, Cynodon, Desmodium, Digitaria, Dactylotinium, Brachiaria, Cetaria, and Sporobolus, etc. These are nothing but the different names of these grass species. So these different type of grasses, they basically dominate as a producers. So they can do the photosynthesis and they can produce their own food. So these producers, we know that they are also called by another name, that is autotrophs. So beside these grasses, there are few local trees and shrubs, but they are very less in number to contribute to the primary productivity. And then we know after the producers, we have obviously consumers. So these consumers are dominated by the grazing herbivores, that is grazing animals like zebra, giraffe, gazelles, antelopes, wild buffalo, wildebeest, rabbit, mouses and different variety of insects. Now all these animals, they act as a primary consumers. So they feed onto these different grasses. That's why they are called as primary consumers or herbivores. And these herbivores are further eaten by the carnivores like frog, lizards, birds, fox, jackal, wild dogs. So all these are called as secondary consumers which feed onto the herbivores. And lastly, we have the top carnivores, which are also called as predators like lions, hyena, cheetah, leopard and vultures. So all these are the top carnivores. Since they are not eaten by any other animal, they are called as tertiary consumers, or they are also called as top carnivores. Now the last and very important component of a biotic component, that of the grassland ecosystem, is nothing but the decomposers. So decomposers are very important because they break down the dead bodies of organisms. So even huge amount of dung is produced by the herbivores because they are continuously eating grasses and their excretory matter is in the form of dung. And now this dung needs to be decomposed. So for this, the decomposers like algae, fungi, bacteria, they play a very important role. So these are called as a decomposers. And since this dung is decomposed, all the nutrients which are present in the dung, they are again recycled and they are made available to the grasses, that is producers back. Yes, so along with decomposer, even some insects also help. So you must have heard the name dung beetle, which feeds onto the dung of these herbivores and they help in the decomposition of the dung. So the chief or the important decomposer of a grassland ecosystem include bacteria, actinomycetes, which are type of fungi, and other fungi like aspergillus, rhizopus, mucor, penicillium, fusarium, etc. So many species of other fungi are also present. These are just few examples of the fungi which acts as a decomposer in a grassland ecosystem. Now let's see what are the threats to these grassland ecosystem. So you must have heard of global warming. Now since the temperature of the earth is increasing and that has resulted into different bad effect onto these grassland and which has resulted into formation of deserts or the loss of this grassland. Even the human beings are increasing in their population, so their needs are increasing, so development activity is going on to increase the industries or the settlements like villages. So for this there is continuous cutting of the grassland ecosystem. Even some varieties which are hybrid varieties of plants like soybean wheat, which are drought resistant, cold resistant and herbicide tolerant. Such varieties also affect the grasses which are normally growing in that ecosystem, but they are replaced by these plants like soybean, wheat and corn. Now where only one crop is grown in the form of grasses, obviously the different types of pests and diseases they will spread very easily, so that will also result into the loss of a particular grassland ecosystem. Now why these grasslands are important to us? Now grasslands are very important because for raising our livestock, that is buffaloes, cows, they feed onto the grasses and which are important for us for the milk and dairy products. Grassland also provide home to many different animals which are hunted as well as domesticated animals. So they are basically very important grazing area for the human beings. Also they have a very rich biodiversity. Grassland is full with different varieties of birds, reptiles, insects, as well as arachnids like scorpions, spiders, and they protect many varieties of birds as well as different varieties of plants. So you will see some endangered varieties of birds which are exclusively seen only in the grassland ecosystem. Those are called as grassland birds. So what we should do, how we can conserve this ecosystem? So we should prevent the illegal wildlife hunting. We should prevent grassland being burnt and we should prevent the fires. Sometimes these fires are the natural fires or sometimes even the man-made fires. So these fires which are destroy the entire grassland in very few hours, this should be prevented. Then we should prevent overgrazing by our cattle and other herbivores which are domesticated by human beings. And rather than releasing them in the grassland, we should do the stall feeding. That means they should be provided the food at their own place. Then creating protected areas where like national parks and wildlife sanctuaries that will give protection to the animal species which are present in particular areas, as well as this will give protection to the different grassland species. So with this we conclude today's lecture. If we take a recap of today's lecture, we have understood what is grassland, what is meant by grassland ecosystem. We understood the three different types of grassland ecosystem, that is tropical grassland, temperate grasslands and polar grasslands. We have understood where they are present on the earth globe. Then we have looked at all three types of grassland with their characteristic features, and finally we looked at the biotic and abiotic components of a grassland ecosystem, and then we looked at the what are the threats and how we can conserve the typical grassland ecosystem. So with this we conclude today's lecture. Thank you.